I'd like to welcome Ian Barnett. Thank you, Ian, for joining us. Ian, you're a vice president with FortWhyte Alive out in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Tell us a little bit about what FortWhyte Alive is and the work that you're doing there.
Sure. So FortWhyte Alive is a 660-acre urban green space, all located within the limits of the City of Winnipeg, which is a pretty unique situation for cities across North America to have that type of land carved out, privately operated, not operated by a municipality or anything like that. Our mission is based around environmental education, outdoor recreation, and social enterprise. And through our land and facilities, we're connecting people to nature. We're hoping that they will develop an awareness and understanding of the natural world. And through that growing awareness and understanding and appreciation, take steps in their own lives to lead more sustainable lifestyles. So we do that across a breadth of program initiatives and facilities that we have here on site. And we really have a diverse array of programs that helps us accomplish our mission.
So let me start with the first really interesting thing you said, 660 acres inside kind of an urban environment. How did you come about having 660 acres to work on? Was that granted to you? Was that a gift? Like, how did that 660 acre reserve get established?
It's quite a story. We're about 60 years into our history. This year's our 60th anniversary. And as far as the land base goes, it's a number of different parcels of land that we operate off of. The main 200-acre parcel that we originally started with was originally an industrial site. So it was operated by the Canada Cement Company, which became Lafarge, which is now Amrise. And they excavated the land around us for clay, which they used in the manufacture of cement. So over the period of about 80 or 90 years, starting in the early 1900s, they excavated about 5 separate pits for clay, and they were literally just that. They were just clay pits. But eventually, over time, as the pits were abandoned, they filled up with water. The water attracted wildlife. It attracted people for recreation, particularly the Canada Cement Company employees, and the idea of a nature center kind of grew organically out of those initiatives. There was Canada Cement Company's employees who were interested in conservation for waterfowl and things like that. So they started keeping captive Canada geese and different breeds of ducks on the site. And out of that grew the Wildlife Foundation of Manitoba, and a group of quite visionary Winnipeggers who saw this industrial site, which was essentially a moonscape. It was stripped land with not a lot of naturalization around it, and they saw the potential for this site to promote environmental education in the 60s when environment and education were two words that didn't go together, and the environment wasn't at the top of people's consciousness. So they, as Canada Cement, kind of abandoned the pits and the land. The people who are running the Wildlife Foundation of Manitoba were able to negotiate a land transfer agreement. So basically, it was a 3-party agreement where Lafarge gifted the land to the province of Manitoba, and the province of Manitoba leased the land on a long-term basis to the Wildlife Foundation of Manitoba at that time. And so that was our first 200 acres of land that came into being. In 1983, we built an interpretive center, which is an award-winning building, which I'm sitting in right now. It's where my office is. And that was kind of the base of operations for the growing environmental education programs that the center was mandated to fulfill. And over time, more land became available. We purchased a parcel of land, about 180 acres, that was former agricultural land. We acquired more land in a similar land transfer and long-term lease agreement with the province through another cement company, Inland Cement, and we lease a small portion from the City of Winnipeg as well. So it's And in that way, we've been able to protect 660 acres of green space.
I love what you said. You've nature reclaimed what you described as a moonscape, and now you've got an interpretive center. So, that was then. I want to elaborate on the three things that you said. Your kind of mission and vision is to one, look at the environment. The second is an education component, and the third is a social enterprise. But maybe let's start at the first. Like, obviously, there's much more awareness of environmental issues, but how do you see the role of FortWhyte in maybe reclaiming some of this green space in urban environments? How do you see your role as being stewards of an environmental mission and vision?
Um, well, we're working predominantly with an urban population, right? And a lot of that population doesn't have a connection to nature these days, and doesn't necessarily have easy access to a natural space, like maybe a park or something like that. But really, that's not really necessarily a wild space. It's often a manicured area or something that's less than wild, I guess. And to some extent, we're manicured, but for the most part, our land is fairly natural habitat. So we're providing convenient access for people to connect with nature, particularly people who wouldn't necessarily have that easy access on a regular basis. And the mental health benefits of those times spent outdoors are becoming more and more understood as being tremendously beneficial. And so we're seeing that people really wanting to be outdoors on a trail, bird watching. We have a bison herd here, so coming to see the bison. You can paddle on our lakes, you can rent a boat, that type of thing. So creating those connections through activity, through calm reflection, through just a simple walk in the woods or whatever. It's how we fulfill our mandate. And then of course the education piece is kind of our bread and butter.
But before we get to the education piece, I'm
Yeah.
curious because it's a long way from Canada goose and a couple of species of duck to bison.
Yeah.
What other types of animals would people experience when they visit FortWhyte? And also talk about maybe some of the plants. But what has been reclaimed by nature and what has been introduced by you from a conservation and an education perspective?
Um, a lot of the plantings and the forests and things like that were and we have wetlands here as well. We have a boardwalk system going through a series of wetland ponds. All that was constructed as part of the reclamation, and when we opened the interpretive center. The a lot of the forest plantings and things like that were not around because the land was industrial, and the the trees would have been in the way. So a lot of that stuff has been planted, but now it's a mature aspen parkland. So we're home to we're a major migratory route for songbirds in the spring and fall. So we have a very active birding cohort that patronizes us on a regular basis through the spring and fall. Canada geese, obviously, we see them coming through in the spring and nesting here, and then also coming back through in the fall on their fall migration, and they'll stage here at night. So we actually make an event out of it. So in the fall, we have sunset goose flights where people come and watch the thousands of geese come onto the lake at sunset, and it's quite a spectacle. Wild animals, we have white-tailed deer, we have coyotes that we see occasionally. As I said, we have a captive bison herd, so the largest urban-based bison herd in North America, about 35 to 40 animals that we manage on a 70-acre prairie, and that's obviously an important historical animal to the Indigenous people and to Manitoba in general. We have fishing available, so when our lakes are populated with fish, so northern pike, walleye, perch. Unfortunately, we have a problem with carp, which are an invasive species, but that's just part of wildlife management, I guess, is dealing with those invasive populations. So it's really a subset of what you would see throughout Manitoba in terms of wildlife and diversity of animals and plants and fish.
I guess maybe it's a self-answering question. I guess the focus is going to be in populating obviously your environment with species that are native to the local the local environment.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do too much active population. Like the deer just show up, like they're just here because we have a great habitat for them. And well, I mean, white-tailed deer are very well adapted to the urban environment regardless. And then we have a little bit of more of a natural habitat adjacent to an urban environment, which is great for them. Yeah, we're not bring in African lions or tigers or anything like that.
Yeah.
It is strictly a native animals and things you would typically find in the Manitoba surroundings.
So let's jump to the interpretive center, and I'm guessing that's kind of the hub of a lot of the education programs that you do. Can you maybe describe maybe the growth of the center and then some of the programs that you're running to help educate people about the importance of nature and the species that are on property?
Sure. Yeah. So the Interpretive Center opened in 1983. It was designed by an architect called Carl Nelson and built by Malcolm Construction, both well-known Winnipeg firms. And it's a very unique structure. I don't have a picture of it, but it kind of rises at an angle out of the landscape. And yeah, it houses our administrative offices, but more importantly, it's our educational hub. So it has interpretive displays. Right now, we just did several years ago a full retrofit of the building, so everything's fairly new. So we have climate change exhibitry and some live exhibits that demonstrate the impact of climate change on different Manitoba habitats and the wildlife that inhabit them. We have the aquarium of the pardon me, the aquarium of the prairies, which is a large aquarium that has again native fish on display. We have a touch museum, which is full of taxidermied animals, where kids can get up close and personal with the animals that you might find throughout Manitoba. Obviously, in a because they're taxidermy, it's in a in a safe environment. But we do they're not like behind velvet ropes or anything like that. Like we encourage kids to touch them and pat them and things like that. And then we have a prairie soil diorama as well, which kind of demonstrates the evolution of the land from kind of when the indigenous people inhabited predominantly the pre-settlement land up to now with modern day agriculture. So the transformation of Manitoba's landscape over the last several hundred years.
I'm sure when people visit the interpretive center, there's a lot of the educational stuff, but how involved in you in taking the knowledge that you're curating and bringing that out into other parts of the community?
Outreach is a bit of what we do. But predominantly we're place based. Like our learning takes place on site here. Interestingly, during the pandemic, we had to pivot a little bit, and we expanded a little bit more into offsite learning and virtual learning and stuff like that. But really, like the magic of what we do is by being on the land in nature and experiencing and touching and hearing and smelling the the uh, the forest and the marsh and the swamp and the grassland areas and really experiencing them firsthand.
And then the third thing that you mentioned right off the top was the social enterprise component of the work that you're doing. You maybe describe what that is and how that came about?
Sure, yeah. So FortWhyte Farms is our social enterprise. So we have a small working urban agriculture operation here at FortWhyte Alive. And it started about just over 20 years ago. And it was a desire to share our land and facilities in a way that we hadn't done so before, and with populations that traditionally hadn't had access to our land and facilities. So for the most part, when schools are coming for a field trip, they come for a 2-hour field trip. They we achieve our learning objectives, and they learn a curriculum and things like that, and then they go back to their school, and then we may never see them again. We wanted to do programming on a long-term basis with the same group of kids and really start having an impact on maybe smaller groups of people, but with bigger, longer-term impact, deeper impact. So given our land-based agriculture seemed to be a logical avenue for that. So we started with beekeeping. We partnered with a local beekeeper and a local school that served the inner city. So a group that doesn't have easy access to our facilities because we're kind of tucked away in the southwest corner of the city. And until recently, we didn't even have transit access. So if you didn't have a car, you weren't coming to FortWhyte. So those groups are who we wanted to focus on. Um, so we started that. We did beekeeping. We worked with another school with a predominantly indigenous population with our bison herd, and they actually had a full commercial butcher shop on site, so they were actually able to take surplus animals from our herd. We had sent them to the abattoir, and then they were able to take the meat and cut it and sell it through the school. Um, and so at that time, we were kind of just facilitating these connections. We didn't really have our own facilities to be able to do those things. So we received some very generous funding and worked with different community partners, such as the two schools that we were doing the programming with, and developed a facility on site to host the farm. We bought our own beehives. We obviously we still had the bison herd. We started a vegetable garden, which we still do today. We had an aquaponic system, which we no longer have, but that's growing fish and plants in a hydroponic system where the waste from the fish fertilizes the plants, kind of a closed loop system. Um, and and we've just evolved over the years to the point where we're serving about 100 youth during the school year. And then we're employing about 15 youth during the summer, full-time employment on the farm. And we've evolved beyond just farming. So we have obviously the farm operations, the gardens. We have livestock, chickens, pigs, rabbits. We have a commercial kitchen where youth can basically take the food that they've grown themselves and create value-added products that we sell in a market. That's where the social enterprise comes in by selling the products that we're making. And we've also added a woodworking studio, so just another skill that allows the youth who are participating to get an introduction to, if they're employed on the farm for the summer, get a little more in-depth into each of those areas, the agriculture, kitchen, and woodworking, and then potentially create connections for future careers in those areas. And all that stuff has marketable product that we're developing that we can sell and generate revenue for the farm.
Where does let me ask it this way. Where does that spirit of innovation come from? You've just described a whole bunch of things that it doesn't seem like other organizations are trying. Clearly there's something in the DNA of FortWhyte Alive that continues to drive you and your coworkers forward to try new things. Is that something that's baked into your identity?
I would say absolutely, yeah. We've always been, because we're private, we're not constrained by government bureaucracy or anything like that. We've been able to be very nimble over the years, and often it's in response to funding opportunities. And that's essentially where the farm came out of, is a funder approached us and said, we have this pool of money available that's specifically for this population and this type of programming. Is there anything you can offer that would match that? And the rest is kind of history. And the several other funders kind of lined up um, serendipitously after that to kind of create that base of funding that we were able to respond and adapt to very quickly. So yeah, we're very much able to respond to opportunity in the community and need in the community fairly quickly, and that's how we've grown and developed over the decades.
What are some of the big challenges you're facing right now? Obviously, you're a fairly unique program in the Canadian landscape, but there must be some unique challenges, whether that's growth or sustainability. What are some of the things that you're dealing with on the day-to-day basis?
I think it's probably the same for any other charity in the country, is funding. We have a development department that is constantly looking for new granting opportunities or raising money through individual donations and campaigns and appeals to individual donors. And we have a well respected in the community, so we have a good reputation, and it's fairly easy for us to convince people that they should fund us. But corporations and government and foundations change their priorities over the years. So we may have stable funding from a corporation or something like that for several years, say for FortWhyte Farms, and then they reshift their priorities, and all of a sudden that grant that we've counted on for a number of years is gone. Um, so it's a matter of constantly finding those new opportunities to fill those gaps. And we do have a pretty diverse revenue base. Like we charge admission for people to come here. We have a membership program, so people can buy a membership to get certain benefits like free admission year round. We have gift shops on site. We rent our facilities for weddings and corporate retreats and things like that. So we do have a fairly diverse revenue base that helps us fill that excess capacity that we have financially.
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
sort of anticipated one of my questions. So while we're on the topic, if
Yeah.
somebody who's listening to this wants more information about the work that FortWhyte Alive is doing, or something as simple as facility rentals, what's the website? How do people follow you and stay engaged?
Yeah, it's fortwhyte.org, FortWhyte.org. And all our information is up there in terms of all the stuff I've talked about with the farm, all our membership, admissions, calendar of events, donations, and all that type of thing is all there. Facility rentals. Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. So and we'll put a link to that in all of the show notes that accompany these episodes.
Great.
I want to go back to one of the things, you've got a unique property, you've got members, you've got day visitors, you've got school groups that are coming through, you've got this diverse stream of revenue. I'm curious, how can people get involved? And I guess it starts from visiting. So give me a few examples of the events that you have. You mentioned one with the sunset for Canada geese.
Yeah.
Give me an example of some of the activities that are taking place for somebody who's maybe FortWhyte curious, would say, "Hey, that sounds like a good idea," and then I'll follow up with that after.
Sure. We have it would take me. Could do a whole other program on all our offerings that we do for public programs. But for instance, in the summertime, we do bison bus tours. So we take a bus out directly into our bison herd, so people can get up close and see the animals and get great photos, and obviously get some interpretive information about the bison herd. We have sort of one-shot events through the year. Like we do a big event on Earth Day every year where we do reduced admission and bring in a bunch of outside groups and exhibitors and highlight our family programs and stuff like that. We do very regular weekend events, just something as simple as a bonfire and marshmallow roast, or we have a pioneer sod house as an exhibit. So we'll have a volunteer in there doing interpretive information and storytelling in the sod house. We try to keep things pretty interactive. We do guided walks pretty frequently through the summer and spring. As I think I mentioned, we can do boat rentals. There's kind of something for everyone, for sure. And then in terms of getting more deeply involved with FortWhyte, we do have a very large volunteer base as well. We have over 500 volunteers on our roster who do everything from deliver those programs that I was mentioning to doing back office administrative work, to gardening, to wood chopping, all sorts of things that we have volunteers for. And we have as I said, a very dedicated volunteer base, and that's often a next step that people take once they've made a connection with FortWhyte and want to get more involved.
Yeah. So people can support your work by obviously visiting the center, by maybe volunteering, or maybe with a donation, and they should be exploring all of those options. Maybe I've saved the most difficult question for last. Why does any of this stuff matter? Like, why is this important?
It matters because we're in a climate crisis, and we are facing peril as a planet, and people need to be aware of the way that nature sustains us, not just physically but mentally, and people need to know that without the natural world, we won't have much to live with or for anymore, and that's all in jeopardy because of what's going on with climate change right now. And so I think the more people appreciate nature and want to protect it, the better it is for all of us. And so I think that underpins everything that we do, is knowing that we've got only got the one planet, and we need to protect it.
I don't want to end on that negative
Yeah.
tone, but maybe just for people who are living in southern Manitoba, or people that are visiting southern Manitoba, uh, just give your best pitch for why they should check out FortWhyte Alive.
Because it's a jewel in the province. It's something that, as I said, is very unique. Not many urban centers have anything that even touches what we have here in Winnipeg, and it offers something for everyone. I think I've talked about a lot of the programming that we do. On any given day, there's something. Something for anyone to come and see and appreciate, and there's all those kind of spontaneous moments where you encounter wildlife on the trail or something like that just creates those lifelong memories. And we have lots of people who come here as children, and create those memories of coming here with their family or their school or whatever, and then we hear them coming back with their kids when they have their own families and things like that. So it is those lifelong connections, those formative experiences that we really value and try to promote, and we see happening here all the time.
Ian, thanks for telling us a little bit more about FortWhyte Alive. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.